let me start with who I am, then I'll come back to the sponsors. All right, so my name is Jody Hamilton. I'm the manager of the web engineering team at Renaissance Electronics. I'll tell you a little bit about Renaissance Electronics in a minute. And I've been the manager of the web engineering team for about 3 years. I've been with Renaissance for about 4 years. And previous to that, I had my own company called ZivTech, which is in Philadelphia. It's a Drupal agency, which I co-founded in 2008. So I was like my background is as a backend Drupal developer. And thank you to the sponsors of the PNW Drupal Summit, with a special call out to Amazy and Tugboat, who we work closely with. Amazy hosts our site, and Tugboat, we are actually the biggest Tugboat user that they have. Tugboat does all of our pull request environments. It's critical to our development workflow. Okay, so this talk is going to be about our website, www.renaissance.com, which is the main public website of Renaissance. And a bunch of the lessons and work that we've done over the past 3 or 4 years, just on front-end and back-end performance optimization for that website, and some of the specific things that we learned over that time. So Renaissance is a large semiconductor company. We're actually one of the biggest suppliers of microcontrollers in the world. We ship 3.5 billion microcontrollers every year. You probably have some in your devices, in your car, and all over the place.
Don't even know it.
Yes, exactly. We do over $8 billion in revenue in a year. Our headquarters is in Tokyo, but through a lot of acquisitions, we're all over the world. The Renaissance has acquired like American companies, European companies all over the place. So that's sort of how we have this American team here. And we've been on Drupal since like Drupal 6 for the main like public website. So my team is actually like 25 engineers, most of them Drupal developers. The remainder are like QA engineers. And so we actually have like 25 engineers working on this site full time, just on like this Drupal site, which is pretty fun. And Joel is with me today. He's the development manager for the team, so he's kind of my right-hand guy, so feel free to chime in with anything, Joel. But just to say, like, my role is mostly, in terms of performance, my role is mostly like, I like to find issues and like do investigations, but I don't really write code anymore. I've got this, lucky to have this whole team that is coming up with this stuff for me. And so we have a lot of challenges with Drupal performance on our site. One of our issues is that we have like over 100,000 pages on this website. Which makes it really hard to, here's our homepage, it makes it very hard to keep our cache warm because it's just like so many pages. The reason we have so many pages is the semiconductors, there are just like so many little variations of the products with lots of like detailed information. So that's like that's a constant challenge, just keeping our cache warm. We also have authenticated users, so like we have people logging in to get access to certain information that's not public, and those are really important users. Those are important customers, so we don't want the site to be slow for them. We have frequently updated content, so we've got like a whole team of like content editors who are constantly publishing content all day long. But then we also have like feeds that are coming in from different places that are updating our products, our stock levels, little details about our products that are coming in all day long, like updating, you know, tens of thousands of pages all of the time. So on top of that, we also have like a lot of interrelated content. So like if you look at one of our product pages, you'll see we have like these are other pages that are related. These are other products that are related. These are other like parts that are like variations of this product that are separate pages. Then we have here like 100 different documents that are specific to this product.
So cache invalidation city.
Yes. So any of these things getting updated, here's some related evaluation boards, some related software, some related videos. Like, so any of these things getting updated will invalidate this page, and this is a very expensive like page to build. With all of this content, like we don't want to like do like a node load for all of these different related things on this page. And obviously we have high traffic, and we have an international audience. We are in 3 languages, English, Japanese, and Chinese, and we have traffic from all over the world all the time.
And it looked like you had commerce in there. Is that pseudo-commerce?
Yeah, it's pseudo.
Okay. But you got a lot going on.
Yes.
There's a lot going on that site.
And so in terms of performance, we do have like people who are interested in SEO, who are concerned about our performance and are like paying attention to our core web vitals. But for me, when I joined the company, I originally joined the company as a product owner before I became the lead of the engineering team. And when I got there, they were kind of like, well, the site was very slow when I got there. It would take like, nothing was cached at all on any level, and it would take like 5 seconds just to load a page. And I was like, this is not acceptable. Like, I'm going to fix this, whether it's my job or not. And everyone was kind of like, it's not that bad. It used to be worse. And like, this is just how Drupal sites are. And I was like, no, this is not how Drupal sites are. Like, I've worked on like so many Drupal sites, and they were not like this. This is not okay. And it really became like an obsession for me to like improve this performance. And the reason I'm so passionate about it is I just think like when you think about like, you know, we're like an $8 billion revenue company and we're selling microcontrollers, like when people, it's about the brand to me. Like when people come to our site,
they're going to think your processors are slow.
Exactly. If you come to our site and it takes 5 seconds to load, do you trust us to be good engineers that are selling fast microcontrollers? Like even if it's subconscious, it's like this site has to be blazing fast to tell the customers that we're good engineers and we're doing, you know, and we're making fast products. So I just think like in terms of like our branding and our marketing, the speed of the site is the thing. So it's kind of just become my, it's not actually my job, it's just my passion project. So through that journey, I've kind of become like an expert on a lot of parts of Drupal performance. So I'm going to talk a little bit about both backend and front end today. So for backend, some of the areas I'll talk about are cache strategy, database queries, rendering performance, like block rendering, CDN configuration, lazy loading of slow components, And then this really cool project we did this past year where we actually enabled authenticated user CDN caching, which I was very excited about. And then on the front end, we'll talk about core web vitals, which are related to front end and back end, but back end's a little bit more contained. Asset optimization, critical rendering path, and Google Tag Manager optimization. If you use Google Tag Manager, it's a big source of performance issues. Okay, so to review some of the basics about Core Web Vitals. Core Web Vitals are a Google standard. And what I like about them is it's just a standard. It just lets us all kind of have something consistent, because there's a lot of different ways you can measure site performance. And this is the one that people who are interested in SEO will be looking at. Google says that these Core Web Vitals have something to do with SEO. I personally think it's such a small impact on SEO, it's really not that big of a deal for SEO. I think the perception of users about how fast our site is much more important than what these things are doing to our SEO. Because I think if you search for one of our products, you will find it on Google. But yeah, they're consistent. You can measure them in a lot of different tools. They're fairly easy to understand. One thing that you need to understand about Core Web Vitals is they're all measured at the 75th percentile. So when it says that the largest contentful paint has to be less than 2.5 seconds, that means 75% of your page views on your site, of Chrome users at least, that's how Google measures it, need to be less than 2.5 seconds. So to kind of show you a little bit about how those percentiles work, this is a histogram of our time to first byte. So time to first byte is not a Core Web Vital. That time to first byte, that's like your back-end performance. How long does it take to get that HTML response from the server? But it's critical to your Core Web Vitals because LCP is a very important Core Web Vital. I would argue maybe the most important. And your largest contentful paint can't happen until you get your back-end response. So you're going to get your back-end response first. Everything that goes into back-end performance and caching will be involved in that. And then after you get your back-end response, then you'll get your your first paint, your first contentful paint, and then your largest contentful paint. So largest contentful paint is how long does it take until the largest element in the first viewport actually displays. So a lot of times that's like the same as the first paint or the first contentful paint. But if there's a big image, it could take longer because maybe the page loads and then the big image loads. On our site, it's often not an image, but so anyway, like when we get into largest contentful paint, that's where we get into time to first byte and all the back end stuff. But so this is a histogram of our time to first byte in New Relic. And so you can, and then these are like some of the percentile measurements. So 75th percentile, that's what Core Web Vitals measure. So at the 75th percentile, 75% of our page views are happening in 1.0 second. But what's really interesting is at the 50th percentile, the median is 0.2, right? So half of the page views are happening in 0.2 seconds, but all Core Web Vitals are going to measure is what's happening at the 75th percentile. So it's really easy to like make performance improvements that don't do anything for your core web vitals. And that doesn't mean they're pointless, but they won't help you. It can be very hard to move that needle because you might make the fast traffic even faster, and it just won't have any effect at the 75th percentile. Or you could make the really slow traffic a little bit faster, and it still won't affect the 75th percentile. So you kind of have to like start going after things that are actually happening at that 75th percentile, like of cases. But you can see like in our in this histogram here, all this really fast traffic, this is everything that's coming from the CDN. And since we have visitors from all around the world, and like the CDN is distributed all around the world, that's really where we need to be serving our content from. If you're in Japan and you get a miss from our CDN, you've got to go all the way to our servers over here. So it's going to be slow no matter whether we're using Drupal page cache or anything on the Drupal side. So sometimes you'll see kind of like a hump in here, like if you're using Varnish or Drupal page cache or something, you could have a hump where it's like they missed the CDN, but they're still getting a cached page. And then over here you start getting into your like real cache misses.
So would that be an indication of the cache cooling down? Like people, like it's expiring, like say you have like we noticed that when we implemented it one day, it was like just this curve constantly of like, okay, because you'd see people hit the cache throughout the day and they'd be receiving the cache response, so you would see it crawl up, and then the cache would reset, and then that next day it was just like the bottom and to build back up as more people hit the cache page. Do you think that's just people not hitting, as you said, like that?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have like a timed, thing with our cache, but yeah, we have there's cache invalidation happening, and then also like on the CDN level, things just fall out of cache.
Yeah.
If they're not hit enough with like 100,000 pages, ultimately like you really just can't keep everything in cache.
Yeah.
So they'll just things will just fall out. So we try to do our best with it, but there's always going to be some misses.
You said that there's a lot of data that ends up getting updated. Does the system pre-warm the caches with that?
Right now, no. We don't have like cache warming, but what we do have is like 1 million bots that are hitting our site all the time.
They do it for you.
But just to finish some of the basics about core web vitals, the other core web vitals, CLS is the cumulative layout shift. This is about whether things shift on the page after the page loads, and I will show you an example of that later. That one is usually like not that hard to fix. Like that's you can kind of see those shifts, especially if you just kind of slow things down, or look at those like images that Google DevTools can make and other tools. Those are usually like fairly simple to fix most of those issues. And then interaction to next paint, that's the newest core web vital. It replaced one that was called first input delay. It's a similar idea as first input delay, but it looks at all interactions. So this one is really where you get into what's happening after the page loaded and people are interacting with the page, usually like on the JavaScript level, and it really has to do with CPU. So usually your interaction to next paint will be great on desktop, and it's really IMP mobile that you have to look at, because obviously there's a lot of, well, for us, since we're international, there's a lot of people with some really cheap phones in parts of the world. So that's where you can really run into issues with the responsiveness.
Plus, some of those pages have a lot of UI elements, so
Yeah.
it's not gonna
Okay. Any questions about core web vitals? Basics. Okay, so first I'm going to talk about backend performance and some of the stuff we've done for Drupal backend performance. So we do a lot of measurement. So we've kind of learned, like, if you can't measure it, you can't optimize it. So we have to invest in our tools and what data we're tracking. So over time we've done a lot. Most of it's in New Relic, and some of the things that we're doing in New Relic. And I think to introduce you to New Relic a little bit, if you're not already using it, like everyone that has Pantheon or Acquia, I think gets a free New Relic account. So most of us have access to New Relic, and I always found I had access to New Relic, but it's overwhelming. Most people, like most Drupal developers, I think don't really know how to use New Relic that well. And you just kind of click around in there, and you're like, okay.
I don't know how to use any monitoring platform.
I realize it's like the what is the term for that job? Whoever sets that, whoever has the specialty of like a site reliability developer. Like, I think it's just like it's not impossible. It is very hard. It's just a deep.
Yeah.
Like, you need to know how to instrument each service.
Yeah.
Yeah. So finally at this role, I was able to really get into New Relic, and
It's when you're starting to optimize things a lot.
yeah. And so I guess one thing I can explain about New Relic, there's a lot of different sources of data, but there's what's going on the application level, there's what's going on the browser level. We also bring a lot of logs into New Relic. There's all kinds of data flowing here, but the one that I use the most is called PageView. And PageView is what's happening on in the browser. And the reason I like PageView most of the time is that since I'm very interested in CDN caching, PageView is the only thing that captures all of our traffic, because the other data only happens if you make it to the server, like the transaction data and some of the other stuff in there. And so I like to look a lot at the actual performance on the browser side. That's the closest to the core web vitals, and that's really looking at a fuller picture of the data. So I do a lot with PageView, and you can kind of think of PageView data as kind of similar to Google Analytics data, because it's happening in the browser. It's not complete data. There are people that have an ad blocker that are blocking it, or whatever reason that it's not loading. So it's not you can't use it as this is all of your traffic, but it's a good representation. So one of the things that we have done that's not that hard to do is added custom data into PageView. So this is showing some of the custom attributes that we've added. So one that we've added is CDN cache hit.
Awesome.
So you can get that from the response header. And so I don't know why everything's a CDN cache hit right now. That's because we're just either really awesome or our data's messed up. But let's go with awesome. So we keep track of that, and so then we can actually just do hey, give me the average CDN cache hit for this content type, or for this country, or whatever we need to do. And then we added route. Most of them are node routes, but if we want to dig through the data for specific routes, we can do that. And then we added content type, which is really really useful for a Drupal site because we're usually trying, on the back end, we're usually trying to optimize and the front end, we're usually trying to optimize for a specific content type. We also check browser cache hit. The only thing better than CDN cache is browser cache. And I'll talk about that a little bit later because that's a real missed opportunity on a lot of Drupal sites. But I think we had more than 10% or maybe around 10% now of just browser cache hits, and that really helps our numbers and takes a lot of load off and expense and everything. Entity type, we have some custom entity types, so that helps us. And then ID, that's actually our node ID. You can see we have a big site, that's why we have these crazy high node IDs. And then we also track if the user is authenticated. At other times we've added other things, we have tracked does a page have a video on it? If I kind of get a theory oh, maybe the pages with the videos are the problem, or maybe it's the cookie consent thing. Maybe we need to track whether that loaded or what they picked in the cookie consent thing. So then we'll start by tracking the data. Because if you just kind of make a theory and then start writing code, it's amazing how much performance work you can do without ever improving your performance. You can do it forever with these micro optimizations that make no difference at all. So we try to I don't try to go to the team with here's my theory. I try to gather the data first. So yes, that's the custom attributes. Cache tag analysis. So there's a couple of sides of this. One is let's see, let me open here. One is that not everybody realizes in services.yaml, you can enable cache tag debugging. So we have that on all of our tugboats. And that just adds all of the cache information into the HTML.
That's cool.
So I can see this on all of the tugboats without having to
that's cool.
do
So
anything.
it pulls from if you were to dump that or use the bell.
Yeah, and it's there for every part of the page. Every block has its own cache tags in there.
That's just on your dev.
Yeah. Yeah. So then you can see here, here are the cache tags for this block, here are the cache contexts, and cache tags bubble up, so this doesn't show you in an easy way every cache tag that's on the page. You would have to kind of search through here to get the full list, but we are able to see all of the cache tags that are actually on a page. And then in New Relic, we have, I think Moshe made this module called Cache Metrics that works with New Relic, and it keeps track of, among other things, it logs into New Relic every cache invalidation event that actually happens on the site. So, here are our cache invalidation events. So the node list cache tag has gotten cleared 8,000 times this week. So now you have to look at these two things in conjunction because it's oh gosh, it got cleared 8,000 times this week. But are we using that cache tag? So this doesn't actually show you if we're using that cache tag. So to really analyze where your cache tag invalidation problems are, you actually have to go through the cache tags that you actually have, and then you can query New Relic for cache invalidation events that include any of the actual cache tags that you're worried about. And then sometimes you can find well, if you've just started, you'll definitely find major issues. If you've been at it for years, you will probably find major issues because it's really easy to make a mistake there. And so like this node list cache tag, we don't use that anywhere because we've carefully gotten rid of that. But if you use views, I think it adds it to every view by default. So if you have a lot of nodes updated like we do, so this is like we had 8,000 nodes updated this week, then that'll be clearing like everything that has anything using views on it. So Drupal kind of out of the box is like not that great for it has a very strong caching system, but there's a lot of issues. But one of the amazing things I think about Drupal is like we can have all of this caching, but we actually have maintained this ability for like real-time content updates that I don't think a lot of systems could have, like all of this caching and then also be able to tell your content editors that they can edit anything and then every page that's affected will immediately update. Like that's like an amazing thing that we have, but the amount of work that it takes to make that performant is very high. Okay, so cache hit rate analysis. We do that also in New Relic. So we've got like, we track the CDN cache hit rate. So right now we are at like 81% CDN cache hit rate for .com. We also have a Chinese domain that's lower. And then we have block rendering time. This I think is super cool. I'll show you this really quickly. We build almost everything out of Drupal blocks on our site, which keeps things consistent. So we added into transactions, which are sort of like the back end measurement in New Relic. We added like the actual amount of time that each block takes to render. So every time like we get a cache miss, every block gets tracked for how long it took to render. And then I have like these interesting like displays where I take each block and how long it took to render and multiply it by how many times it rendered. And so you can see that like right now this block, like 28% of like our rendering time is taken up just by this one block. So then we know which one to optimize. So we meet once a week and we go over all of our metrics, and then we make new tickets. We're like, okay, well we're going to be optimizing this one next, and then we go after this one, and then so that we don't waste our time like optimizing this thing that we think might be slow, but is not really like impacting that many people. So that was a really cool one. Slow query logs. We have that also in New Relic, and we can see like which are the like biggest bottlenecks there. Blackfire profiling. That's like a back-end like PHP profiling tool that's really cool. So we actually have Blackfire installed on all of our tugboats. So if I want to profile a page, I just go to the page on Tugboat, hit the Blackfire plugin, and hit Profile. And then you get this Blackfire profile that I find a lot easier to understand than the profiles that you get in New Relic. And you can this is like the timeline view, and you can kind of work your way through the million Drupal functions and start to be like, okay, what's going on here? Exactly, and really dig into your back-end performance like that. Okay, so I'm going to skip a bunch of stuff because it's already at 11:30. So some of the cache strategy improvements that we made, we really dug into cache contexts. So on our site, we have a big main menu, and it's slow to render, but it's the same on every single page. Well, Drupal by default adds like these tags, active trail tags to the menus, so it'll cache the menus separately on every single page. So that's totally unnecessary. So we had to remove that cache tag, cache context, from the menu. We've basically gotten rid of views almost completely on the site at this point. But before we got rid of views, there's a module that lets you customize views cache tags, which is important to use if you're using views. Drupal also likes to add this user permissions cache context all over the site, and that means if anybody logs in as authenticated or any other role, they'll get a cache miss on that render array, and in most cases on our site that was totally unnecessary, so we did a lot of work to remove that cache context. We also looked into like how many variations of our URLs do we have. We used to have 8 regions on our site and then 3 languages, and our paths were like /US/EN, so there was like 24 different versions of each page, and so that was like terrible for cache hits. So we were able to do a bunch of work to like remove regionalization completely and get that down to just 3 versions. We also, like on the China site, you used to be able to see the China site in any language, in any region, because it was just really the same site. And now you can only see the China site in Chinese, and that's it. We also, this is a common issue in Drupal, that you will have anonymous session creation, and you might not realize, in most cases, if you have a session in Drupal, even if you're not logged in, you won't get cache hits anymore. You won't get them from your CDN, you won't get them really anywhere. And you might have some contrib module or some custom code that's just adding anonymous sessions when people do something on the site. You can look in your session table to see like what kind of sessions are in there.
Is that a cookie-based thing?
Yeah, but it's like the Drupal, it's like tied to like the Drupal cookie.
Yeah, I've seen something like that Drupal session or something in my cookies. I'm just curious if that was
If you see like the Drupal like SS thing,
yeah, it
not
says Drupal
logged
says
in,
or whatever.
if you're not logged in, that's bad.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you have to figure out what's setting those sessions. And then some of the more advanced things that we've done around caching, we actually like got so obsessed with our cache tags that we created all custom cache tags for everything, and then we added specific invalidation logic for each custom cache tag. So like you can see here, node related documents. So instead of having like a cache tag for each related document, we added a special cache tag, node related documents. And then we have custom invalidation logic. So like if one of these documents is updated, but none of the information that's relevant here was updated, we don't invalidate that custom cache tag, right? So the only thing that actually matters is, did the title change? Did the category change? Did it get unpublished? In this case, it has a date, so that's going to probably be a lot of changes. We'll change that. But in a lot of places where you have related content, you don't have to clear the cache tag just because something updated. So yeah, we got very fine-tuned into that. We also, on the CDN level, we started tracking like the query strings that users were coming in with. The CDN. Your CDN likely is treating each query string as like a unique request, because it doesn't know which query strings your backend actually needs and which ones are just kind of like marketing stuff or front end
like GTM
things. Yeah, like Google ad things or whatever. So we actually went through all of our traffic and figured out which query strings are people using, which ones does our backend actually need, can we reduce those, and then we switched to like only let the CDN only vary by specific query strings, sometimes on specific pages, instead of like varying by all the query strings, because you actually might get a lot of traffic with query strings.
Like search pages,
Yeah.
for example, you'd want.
Yeah, so you can say like the search page could vary by every query string or whatever.
Okay, cool.
And then we have purge by cache tag set up with using like the purge module, so that like the CDN, we have like an infinite cache life, but everything is by cache tag. So things update right away in the CDN, but it's all the same logic with the same cache tags. And that was actually not that easy to set up, and Hoel did that. And then, I don't have a lot of time here, but we did this crazy thing where we like got into lazy loading everything on the page that is role specific, so that we can cache the entire page for authenticated users in the CDN. So right now you can see I'm logged in, you can see the tabs, you can see the admin menu, and when I refresh it, it came right away from the CDN, and then the tabs and the admin menu and this little thing that says account loaded in with JavaScript afterwards. So that was pretty crazy and awesome. So yeah, I only have a few minutes to talk about front-end optimization. So CLS, I think, is pretty easy to fix. I can show you like an example of a CLS issue on this page. Let's see. Like, I think, so if you haven't used this performance tab, this is like the place to be. They've improved this so much in Chrome. So you want to like load this, and then they have stuff in here about CLS. So typically, like, I would kind of identify that there's an issue in New Relic, try to narrow it down in New Relic. Is it on a certain content type or what? Is it just desktop? You know, whatever. And then try to see if I can replicate it here. So like here's the layout shift info, layout shift culprits, and they kind of narrow it down, and they have these like screenshots, and you can actually a lot of times see the shift when you come over these screenshots. I can't see it right now, but earlier I saw one where it was like the font was loading too late, and the breadcrumb was changing into 2 lines instead of 1 line, the whole page shift. So those are usually pretty straightforward to find, and it's not just vertical shifts; it could be a horizontal shift as well. Then you've got first contentful paint. For us, that's the main issue, not largest contentful paint. And first contentful paint is, in terms of like the front end part of it, what we've found is that it's really about the style sheets. So like the render blocking CSS files, you want to have as few of them as possible, as small as possible. But what we're working on now is we're going to inline the critical CSS. So we're trying to like reduce the amount of CSS that we're loading that's render blocking.
That layout stuff would be really important there, as that the layout shift, like get your whatever your flexbox stuff is or whatever, like as early as possible.
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about inline critical too.
Yeah, I think that is like ultimately what we need to do.
Mm-hmm.
You inline your CSS into the HTML, and then that's going to like take away all of that time of those additional requests of those render blocking CSS. So we are hopefully doing that by the end of this year, and then we're just trying to like reduce our render blocking JavaScript. We're trying to get rid of jQuery, but that is tough in Drupal since Drupal Ajax requires it. So that we've still got that loading. In some cases, largest contentful paint is is blocked on images. We use Cloudflare Polish to convert images to WebP. So you can find if you have that kind of problem with LCP. Interaction to next paint. We found that our biggest issue, we did have a lot of custom code issues that we had to improve for IMP, but we found one of our biggest issues was coming from Google Tag Manager, and it wasn't coming from like the ad trackers and all that we always blamed. When we really dug in, which you can do in this performance thing, like you can start recording and then you can like click on interactive elements on the page and then you can dig in to what's really happening in the JavaScript, like the application level, and see what's actually happening during that time. We found it was actually coming from the click trackers in Google Tag Manager that are sending like click event things to Google Analytics. So it wasn't actually like all those like, we always wanted to blame Facebook and stuff like that.
Stuff that you'd added.
More.
It's actually GTM itself.
Yeah, it was actually GTM itself. So we replaced all of those like built-in click triggers with like a custom solution that was like more optimized for IMP. And that gave us like a 20% reduction. We just did that like last week.
Can we just appreciate the fact that Google is the one creating the core web vitals and monitoring it? They're the one.
Yeah. Right. Different teams, I guess. Okay, so yeah, to wrap up, some of our improvements it's an ongoing project. It's going to be, because we have regressions all the time. We're always putting out new code, and then we have new issues to solve. So we have to keep on following these numbers and like seeing what's new. But so far, we've improved our TTFB by 40%. We have not actually improved the front end component of LCP, despite many efforts, but we think if we do this inlining the critical CSS, that's going to be really the key there. We've reduced the CLS down to 0. We've improved our IMP mobile score 50%. It's just about passing, not quite. And we've increased our CDN cache hit rate quite a bit. And so what we do, like our kind of workflow is we meet every week. 1 week we meet on back-end performance. Next week we work on front-end performance. We track a whole bunch. So this is our back-end. We track a whole bunch of different metrics that we decide we want to keep an eye on because they might have regressions or some reason. So like this is our back-end one. We track the TTFB. We track the max memory peak, the number of slow queries, the cache hit rate, which one was the slowest block in order to like fix that. And then on front end, we track all the core web vitals, both from New Relic and the Crux data from PageSpeed Insights, and see where we need to focus there. And then once a month, we report up. And that's like a kind of an opportunity to look back on where we are in the big picture. And for that reporting, we also look at Google Search Console data, which is kind of what the SEO people are looking at more. That is looking at like per page, like not like actual traffic. Like it's like if it only counts like your home page as one page, and then some page that people never look at is also one page. So I don't think it's as telling as the New Relic data, but it's a different perspective, and it can tell you. Sometimes you can find things a little bit easier here. Like it'll tell you specific pages that are having the problem, things like that. So that's yeah.
Okay, so on slide 17, you showed a few numbers that you had been tracking the results, and you said that sometimes there's regressions that will change that. I'm wondering, do you pull snapshots of those numbers with every release just to see?
We don't do it with every release. We do it like every 2 weeks. We
It's
have
more
a
time.
release like every week because we usually look at like 1 week's worth of data. So like after the release, you kind of want to be like, oh, did it improve? But it's hard to tell with just like a few hours of data because the traffic patterns. That's the thing about like when you're looking at live data is so much of what happens in these metrics has nothing to do with anything that we did and is just about what's happening with our traffic. Especially bots doing crazy things. Sometimes they help our cache hit rate, sometimes they make it worse. So like here we had like, oh, that week we had a 93% cache hit rate, but like not because we did anything, because some crazy thing was like hitting some highly cached pages a lot of times. Or we even have click farm people that are like real people, but they're like hitting the same pages all the time. So yeah, a lot of times you can get misled by this data because that's I think what's so fascinating about performance analysis is it's this combination of like your code, but also it's telling a story of like what's actually happening with real people and traffic patterns that are like totally misleading a lot of times. Like I'd say 90% of the time that I investigate something, I just am like, okay, that was a dead end. Because it'll be like, because every time we have one of these meetings, someone will be like, oh, why did it go from 1.3 to 1.0? Like, what did we do? And it's like, it's going to be the same thing as always. I'm going to dig into it, and then we're going to find out that like, we got all this traffic from Vietnam this week, and it's just like a dead end. Yeah, but 1 out of 10 investigations, you find something that's really useful. So. Sorry, I'm over time. Any other burning questions?
No, that's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.